In this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about the building blocks that make up our 3D models. So when looking at our 3D models, you can see here, this is lesson 06 start. These are just some of the primitives that we have available. And these may be great starting points, but there's not a lot that we can do with just a sphere or just a cube without making some modifications to the shape of this. And we can't make any modifications to it without accessing the building blocks that make up these models. So let's take a look at what those are. Now right now this box is just a primitive. So we have the ability to modify the parameters, but there's really no way to access the individual pieces of this model. And so to be able to access those, we need to convert it into an editable state. Okay, so once we do that, we'll lose the ability to change the parameters, but we'll gain a lot of flexibility in creating new shapes and new models. So to convert our model, we can go right-click to our quad menu, go down to convert, and then we have a few different options here. We'll stick with polygons, and those are going to be the editable mesh and the editable poly. So we'll convert this to an editable mesh, and you can see how this changes here, and also a little plus sign shows up next to the name. This will allow us to access what's called the sub-objects. Now the sub-objects are going to be these building blocks. So we'll go ahead and open that up, and you can see these are actually the sub-objects that are available. We have vertex sub-objects, which you can see are highlighted here in blue. These are basically the points where any of those lines intersect. I can select any of those. The next sub-object is the edge. So you can see that those are the lines connecting. And notice as we have these selected here, this selection changes down here as well. We can also toggle through this by using the numbers on our keyboard. So 1 is going to be vertex, 2 edges, 3 faces. So this will allow us to select the individual faces. So in this case, just the triangles are the most basic component of a 3D model here as far as the faces go. Okay. We can also select polygons, which in this case are the quad faces. Okay, and elements, which would be the entire thing. And if we had a model which had multiple pieces that were all self-contained, we could select those via element. And we can toggle through our selections. And they actually remember what has been selected. So if I go back to our vertex selection, you can see that I still have that vertex selected. And it actually will remember what selection that you have here. If I go ahead and select that, toggle to another sub-object, and then go back to polygon, you can see that it actually has remembered that. Okay, and so the vertex is going to be this point here. These are the points that we talked about earlier, which just exist using the coordinates in 3D space. So they're in a specific location. They're connected to each other by edges, and then those edges get together to form a polygon. And those polygons can be broken down into the most basic polygon, which is a triangle, which in this case you can access via the face subobject, and then the element will be the whole thing. If we go and look at the sphere, okay, this is actually an editable poly versus an editable mesh. And keep in mind, if we're in a subobject mode here, we can't select another object until we go up to the top level. Okay, so if I'm here in vertex, I can hit 1, and I'm on vertex, 2 on edges, 3 on faces, and so forth. But I really need to go back to the top level to get to the sphere. Now the same thing applies here, where we can go ahead and toggle down using our number keys to the different selections. Okay, this time though, the polygons are here, but we don't see the face selection. And so we're not able to access the hidden triangles that are there. We can only access whatever specific polygons that we have. But we also we have a border selection, which will allow you to select open borders. Okay, and so those are the sub-objects associated with our editable poly. Here, if I select the NURBS surface, you can see that the sub-objects available are surface CV and surface. And CV stands for control vertex, and that's going to be these green boxes here. And you can see we have a number of ways that we can select our CVs. Okay, we can select a single CV. Okay, if we hit 2, we can go to surface and select the surface itself, or we can select all connected surfaces. Okay, on the CVs, we can select the CVs. We can select different rows of CVs. So this would be a column. This would be a row. So we can manipulate it that way. Okay, if we want to select a row and column, it'll select all the way going this way and all the way going that way. or we can select all CVs. Okay, so we have a kind of a sub selection for the surface CVs that we have there. Okay, now going up to layers, I'm going to turn on our smoothed objects here, and these are going to be sort of the same thing. So we'll look at the patch first. The editable patch, if we open this up, you can see that we have a vertex that we can select. Okay, can select those there. We also have edges that we can select. We have patches, which we can think of sort of like faces or polygons. We have the element, and then also we have the handles, and this will allow us to change the tangency of our handles there. You can see that. So we can access not only the vertices or the vertexes, either one of those is correct, but you can also access the handles to manipulate the tangency there. Okay, and here we have the object with the smoothing, and this is going to be the same as using the editable poly on the sphere. It just has the smoothing applied. So you're going to be able to access the vertices, which you can see here form more of a cage over the smooth surface, edges, the border, polygons, and elements. Okay, so these polygons are going to be smooth, are going to have the same sub-objects available as the editable poly here on the sphere. Same thing goes for this. The mesh smooth, however, will have, if you're accessing it through the mesh smooth modifier, which in this case is on top of a primitive box, so this gives us more flexibility because I can come in and change the values here. Okay, and you can see that the values change on the outer cube that's being used. So you'll find that the modifier stack is going to give you a lot of flexibility here, but you can see under mesh smooth we're only able to access the points, the vertices, and the edges. Okay, we're not able to access the sub-objects beyond that. And you'll find that the different modifiers that you use, you're going to be able to access many of the sub-objects through those so you can work it on a specific selection, but the sub-objects that you're able to select aren't always going to be the same. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Okay, and so those are the building blocks of the models. You can see how they create very simple shapes here with just the vertices, the edges, and the polygons. But you can actually use the same sub-objects to create more complex models. So for instance, we have this scientist, and this is actually, you can actually go through the creation of this character in creating cartoon characters in 3ds Max. But he's actually just made up of the exact same sub-objects that we looked at earlier. So we can go in here and we can access the different points, and you can see we can sort of move those around. The only difference is these polygons are arranged in a little bit of a different formation to those in the sphere. So you're able to modify and get a character using the exact same sub-objects that we would get something like this sphere. Okay, and that's pretty much the whole idea of modeling, taking that geometry and arranging it in specific configurations to get the result that you want. Okay, so that's a quick look at sub-objects here in 3ds Max. Just think of them as the smaller building blocks of all of our 3D models. The next thing that we want to look at is to actually start looking at some of the tools that can be used to modify geometry in different ways. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at some of the more common polygon modeling tools and how they can be used. So we'll go ahead and do that next.